The 100th episode 11, The Calm. This was a really good episode. I was glad to see that we finally got the arc back. And we also got a couple of cool answers from the arc half of this episode. But overall, a lot of stuff went down in this one. And it's interesting to know that we actually only have two more episodes left in this season, which really sucks because I thought it was going to be a long season because the show got so incredibly popular really early on. But sadly, we only have two episodes, but I think they're going to be some really good episodes. And I think we're going to have a really great season finale with some of the cool things that got revealed in this episode and some things that were only hinted towards, especially at the end of this episode. But I love the way it started off. It was fairly simple. They were going through the typical thing. We got to protect ourselves. We got to make sure we have food, make sure we have bullets, split the bullets so that we can have more bullets and protect ourselves for when the grounders finally attack us. And things are fairly normal at first, and of course they have the little argument. And it was interesting to see Octavia and Murphy working together. And Murphy is of course still in the camp, but he's pretty much hated still by everyone. And he does something, at least it's kind of hinted that he's the one who did it. And he burns down the food hut, I guess, and he blames it on the guy who was basically arguing with Octavia, who didn't want to listen to her when she was the one who said, hey, the fire's a bit high, put some wet leaves on it to cool it down so we don't torch all of our food. So he had the perfect way to say that it was someone else's fault, but I'm sure it was him. And he even has the little smile at the end when he split up from the guy when they're fighting each other. And they didn't show much about him in this episode. It was just he had his little moment to show that he's still working on whatever his plan is. And I thought that it would actually focus a little bit on him and Octavia in this episode, since that's kind of how it started. And he would be trying to ease his way into tricking her and finding some way to kidnap her or something like that, so that he could target her brother, who's, I just can't think of his name for some reason. But I thought that's how it was going to go. But they just had his little moment there showing that he's still working behind the scenes. He has his own plan, which I feel like it has to be as simple as revenge. He just wants to basically kill the people that tried to kill him, which is technically everybody, because he was a douche and everyone hated him. But I think he's gonna focus on the big group, like the main characters, of course. But it was interesting to have that in there, so they know, so that we know he's still got his plan going. But it moves into them dealing with this problem and having to figure out, well, if we don't have any of this food, we only have like nuts and berries to help ourselves for like 2 weeks. We have to go out and hunt now so that we can stockpile all our food, because the grounders could come at any time, and who knows how fast they'd be going through the food once they're working like crazy to defend themselves and use that energy up real quick. So they spread out. They of course introduced a random character. He didn't actually die, which really surprised me, but as soon as he came in, I was like, this guy's toast. Like, they're going out. In the preview, of course, it was Finn and Clark who were captured. So I was like, this guy's just gonna, he's been introduced and he's like really nervous and stuff, and then he's just gonna die. But he actually doesn't end up dead in this episode, and they find him at the end, which I thought was interesting. But he was just there to be target practice, and then it's like, oh, he's been knocked out. And then Finn and Clark are of course captured, and they have to save this girl. And the best thing about that is the fact that Clark escapes, but we have no idea what's going to happen to Finn. And they actually failed at their task, and that's what made it a lot better. They didn't get to save the girl, and even if they did, I don't think they would have just let him go anyway. But this makes it a lot more interesting because, for one, Clark could not save that girl. Two, she killed the one guy so that she could escape, so that would probably drive them to kill Finn even more. But also out of that is, of course, Clark killing this guy. That was a huge scene in this show. If I remember right, she hasn't actually killed anyone in the show yet. And she killed that guy. She kicked him in the knee after he mentioned how he got a bunch of the marks even after he hurt his knee. And she slit his throat and he died. And she held his mouth so that he couldn't scream. And that guy's dead and she takes off. But we have no idea where Finn is. They probably have him like locked up in the cell for now. But he could end up dying. They'll probably save him somehow. I'd love to see that happen, but who knows how that's going to play out, and I'm excited to see it. And then Clark even gets captured at the end of this episode anyway. So she escaped temporarily, but then she was caught in a trap that was just set out there. I would assume it was actually to catch animals or something, but she gets caught in that. She hits her head. She's hanging upside down in a tree, and she passes out. So she's gonna get recaptured, and she wasn't found by the couple of people that went out to look for them. And then during this search that they have, where it's Raven, Octavia, her brother, and Monty, which is blowing my mind. I cannot remember her brother's name for some reason, but they all go out. It was cool that they had the radios. It was interesting that Raven was able to build those. And Monty brings up something early in the episode when she's making it, and that's that he has the recording from the dropship, the Exodus ship that crashed, and he hears that it's like interference, and that same interference comes at the end of this episode, and he finds something that we don't get to see. I wish they showed it, and I was really excited to see it, but excuse me, it has to be something technological because nothing can, no, ancient forms of technology can interfere with like electrical technology. It doesn't work like that unless it's metal, which doesn't make sense because it would have to cover that ship to cause radio interference. So there's something going on. It has to be some sort of EMP type thing. It wouldn't be an EMP because that would just completely destroy all electronics. There would be no interference. It would just shut off. But something's out there, something electrical and technologically advanced, just like stuff that's on the Ark. Otherwise, it wouldn't cause interference like that. So I'm really curious to see what it is, and it wouldn't. It has to be something huge because Monty wouldn't have been like, oh my god, and dropped his mic and walked towards whatever it is if it wasn't a big deal. So I can't wait for them to show what it is. Hopefully in the next episode. I don't think they'll save that for the finale. I hope they don't at least, but there are a lot of things going on. They could just be like, where's Monty? And then they kind of show it at the end of next week. But I hope we get to actually see it and he runs back and tells everybody at the camp, like, this thing is here. And once again, that kind of introduces that there could be more tribes out there and they could be really, really advanced compared to some of the other tribes. But I'm incredibly excited to see what that is because it just introduces like a whole new dangerous element to the 100. Or it's a neutral element. We of course don't know. It could be something that's just randomly out in the world that just survived and it's on every couple of decades or something weird like that. But I'm excited for that. And also what they did with Raven trying to get over Finn and how she thought that he and Clark just stayed out late to just do each other. That was interesting. And of course she slept with the leader of the camp. And it kind of sucks that she did that. She's hurt, obviously that's why she did it, but it was funny how he was like, if you're looking for someone to talk you out of this and tell you you're just upset, I'm not that guy. And then they sleep together and he's just like, it's like he saw how crappy of a thing he did, but it was like, he knew that there was really no stopping her anyway because it wasn't going to work. She's just hurt and it's like she's just been left alone now. So it was interesting to have that. And then she finds out that Clark and Finn didn't just stay out with each other. They were actually captured, and she's had her moment to reflect now. So we'll see how that happens or how that plays out when she actually finds Finn, because I'm sure they're gonna find Finn and he'll be fine, or maybe he won't. Who knows? They might kill him off and just bring in a different actor or something to kind of replace him. But curious to see how that plays out as well, and definitely can't wait for the next episode. And I love the fact that in this episode, what they did on the ground was definitely interesting, especially the ending of it, because it brings up the questions like, what's going to happen to Finn now that Clark's escaped? What's going to happen to Clark now that she's been recaptured? And this just popped into my head. It could be a different tribe that captured her. I doubt it is. I'm sure it'll, because I don't think she ran that far away. So I'm sure it's still the same tribe. But what are the people going to do that actually capture her? Are they going to let her go? Because in the preview I saw, it seemed like the person who captured her was actually just toying with her the whole time. So I'm curious to see what that's all about. And of course, what did Monty find at the end of this episode that's clearly just blowing his mind? And what are they going to be able to use that technology for in the next 2 episodes? But I'm excited for that stuff coming up. And of course, I loved everything they did with the Ark too. It was really great to finally get to see what's going on there. And it was funny when they were talking about the Ark. I wasn't really looking at the TV. I was like, just before it came on and they showed it, I was like, it would be cool if it came on and it was like a zombie movie where it was just like everything's weird. You don't know what's happening and stuff. And it would have made sense if that's what it was, because in this episode they mentioned how it had been 2 days since last week's episode, and in that episode I think they had mentioned it had been a couple of days too. So it had been maybe 4 or 5 days or something like that. So it would make sense if we gotten no communication from the Ark. We didn't get to see any footage of the Ark in the last episode, and it had been a couple of days. It would be cool if it started up and it was just creepy and empty and stuff. And that's exactly how it started up, where it's just lights flickering on and off like a horror movie. We don't really know what's happening, and we get one of the council members, the guy whose name, of course, I can't remember his name because I feel like they only say it like twice ever. But we get him, and he's kind of the main protagonist, I guess, as far as the Ark storyline goes in this episode. And it's him really trying to redeem himself, especially after what happened where the people sacrificed themselves. He's still really going through that. He's not as depressed as he was in the last time we saw him, but in this one he's a bit more take charge of that, and he's using it rather than being upset and crushed by it. He's using it as energy and as a form of motivation to save other people and do what he has to do. And he risks his life in this episode to save a lot of different people, including Jaha. And it was just a really good part of the episode. It's one of my favorite parts. I mean, of course, I was excited to see what they did on the Ark. We don't get a lot of details. There's not really much hinted as to what could possibly happen in the next couple of episodes on the Ark. It's really just everything's really just destroyed because this giant portion of the ship has ripped off from it. And they even mentioned in this episode how a lot of people have already died. So I do believe he said like 1,000 people actually did die from that lack of oxygen. It got so low that they just all died, but it was a lack of oxygen. A bunch of people were passed out, and then he wakes up and he finds other people, and then he finds Jaha. And it was just a really good part of the episode. And in the end of this episode, we find out that Clark's mother is actually alive. She wasn't on the Exodus dropship. She was pushed out with a couple of other people. It was about half, I think it was like six of them. And they're all there losing oxygen, but he goes in, he saves them, and Clark's mother's still alive. So I'm really glad that we found her there. I figured she had to have been alive. I was really hoping that she would be on Earth but captured. But if she's still on the Ark, then that means she'll just be helping them communicate with the ground, or with the 100. So she'll still be doing her same thing in the next 2 episodes. But I'm excited to see how things play out now that they're kind of rebuilding. They're still really messed up with people losing oxygen all over the place, but they're working towards a goal. They're fixing themselves back up. They're trying to figure out where can we go, where can't we go, because as the one guy mentioned who was kind of sort of a featured character in this episode, he mentioned how you got to be careful where you go, because if you open the wrong door you can get sucked out into space, because so many doors were connected to the part of the ship that broke off. You have to really watch where you walk at, because if you open a door, like you said, you just get sucked out into space and you're done for. So it'll be interesting to see how they rebuild the Ark and what they do as far as the Exodus ships, or the rest of the Exodus ships, I guess, going down to Earth, and what they can do to help the people that are there. Because with the 1,000 people that died, I don't know how many people are actually left, and I think they had enough to take, I think, 700. So of course there's still a lot of dead people who would have to get sacrificed for whoever else does go down to Earth. But that task, as morbid as it may be, that task has gotten a little bit easier for them, but they still have a lot to figure out on the Ark, and I'm excited to see how they figure it out, how they get down to Earth, and what we get in this season finale, whether or not they're gonna somehow land the entire Ark, maybe like crash land and everyone goes like one side and one side crashes. But it was great to see the Ark, and it was cool how they did it, where everything's just all messed up. No one really knows what's going on because they're all out of it, especially from losing the oxygen. So I'm excited to see how that plays out in the next 2 episodes. But overall, I love the episode. A lot of questions rising. Thing I'm most excited for, without a doubt, is what Monty found, because like I said, it has to be advanced technology compared to what's typically found on Earth. So I'm really excited to see what that is more than anything. But comment below, let me know what you guys saw this episode, your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And of course, what are you guys most excited to see in the upcoming episodes? We only have 2 left, of course. But what do you guys want to see talked about in the next one? Do you guys want to figure out what happened to Finn, what happened to Clark, which I assume has to be in the episode since it's in the preview? Or are you guys more curious about the arc and what Monty found? Comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.